Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is another episode of our discussions on the contemporary affairs that is taking place around us. And 2 weeks ago we discussed about peace building and communication strategies, and we also talked about how intergenerations can get involved in development and community strategies. And we also talked about specifically the youth and how they can be involved in peace building and organizational and community support programs. International Peace Day is celebrated to specifically look at the pursuit of fundamental human rights, which is the right to freedom, the right to mingle, the right to have a peaceful environment and all that. So why is International Peace Day celebrated? It is basically celebrated to measure the pursuit for the fundamental human rights, to check if the rights of people are being maintained, and not only maintained, but also to check the pursuit of that peace. So the International Women's Day, not the Women's Day, the International Peace Day is celebrated to look at the challenges, the unprecedented issues that are taking place, and what a better time for this Peace Day to be celebrated. You know for sure, just the same way I definitely know, as our viewers, you know what is happening around the world. There's a lot of unprecedented hatred, a lot of unprecedented fights, and a lot of unprecedented international and economic fights that we also know. And also in our country, we have had a mix-up recently. A few months ago, we have seen the peaceful demonstrations that have been taking place. So basically, the International Peace Day is to help us solidify and sustain the world sustainable development goals, because you know for sure without peace we are not able to reach the sustainable goals that we have put for ourselves as the current citizen and generations of this world. So we will have to always check on this day and check if the build-up and what we are doing is actually solidifying people. Is it actually making people respect each other as human beings? Is it giving people the space and the environment that they need to nurture and to pass into the next generation? Or is it time that the gains that other generations and other people in the previous generations have worked so far for it, but now we, as the generation that is living currently, are not either able to maintain, or we are not able to even live to that standard that they have set for us? Or are we actually even doing better? So those are the things that the International Peace Day will be measuring, to check is there challenges, and are those challenges that people are able to really overcome, or is there a build-up? Is there a solidification? Are people solidifying or whatever gains that we have made in the previous generations? So what exactly are we seeing? From where I sit, and from the analysis of other scholars and other people who have done a lot of research work, it is evident that the world has a lot of division, that there is a lot of intolerance, and there is a lot of hatred that is going on around the world. We can see, if just to quote a few of the world fights that are going around now, we can see Ukraine and Russia each day in our international news. Those are the headlines that we see. We see there is property destruction, we see a lot of human destruction, and coming closer home, and also maybe what is also contemporary for us even as Kenyans, because it's now bordering between neighboring fights, to religious, to economic, and all that. So we also see the fights that are taking place between Palestinians and their neighbors, the Israelis. And these fights are also affecting a lot of people economically. It is affecting a lot of different parts of the world, in terms of even travels, in terms of tourism, in terms of cohesion and what we have just talked about, solidifying the gains that we have made previously, that each person is free to visit, to worship, and to do whatever they want. So we can see that there's already a lot of emerging hatred and emerging intolerance, and so the world has to step up, whether it is through different structures that we have, through the UN frameworks, or even other different forms of our cohesive institutions. We really need to pull ourselves up and really check on what is happening and how this cannot spread to other parts of the world. So the International Peace Day is a very, very important day, not only for Kenya. For Kenya, it is going to help us because we know we need to have a lot of intergenerational discussions, because we have a group of people who are now being actually looked at by the rest of Kenyans, who are the youth, and where people feel like they are really infringing and also doing a lot of damage to the progress that the country has made. And so for this International Peace Day, I think one of the themes that the civil society organization, the church organization, and other people will have to really do is dialogue, and a lot of conversation, and a lot of intergenerations talk and conversation, so that we see what is positive among the previous, maybe the other generations, and also the Gen Z. What is it that the Gen Z can bring on board, and what can they learn from other people? Because they are not in isolation. These groups of people are our children, they are our cousins, they are our nephews, they are our nieces. So they are people that we relate to in day-to-day life. They are people that we teach in different forums. They are people who are entering into the market, and also who are already in the market. So what dialogues, what activities, and what impacts can we bring on board to ensure that there is an intergenerational dialogue, that there is a discussion, that there is a voice that can be listened to from the other leaders, and also from the younger generation itself? Because like now, what we are seeing is a combatment, or either a misunderstanding between the government and also the young people, who are counting themselves as people who are not employed, educated, but also almost feeling hopeless. So how can we bridge that gap during these international days? By having discussions in our nyumba kumis, in our civil society organizations, in our churches, in our masjids, and even in our different members, so that people can feel like they are on the same level, so that nobody is left behind. So what does the International Peace Day actually look at? They look at 3 key things that bring out the 23 peace indicators. So the 3 key elements are the ones that give us the 23 indicators, so that we look at those indicators and say, for example, in Kenya, this indicator is doing very well, this indicator is doing very well, but there are also these indicators that are deteriorating. For example, there could be no war in the country, but there is negative peace. There is crime, there is hatred of one group against another. So how can that negative peace be measured, so that we are able to improve on the areas that we want to work on? So what are the 3 key elements that we have picked? This is the 3 key elements include domestic and international conflicts. Do we have any conflicts that are domestic and those that are international? And then do we have society safety and security? Do people around our societies, our groups, our networks, our families, our workplaces, are they safe places where we can feel we are secure and we can do, or we can carry our day-to-day activity? And then the 3rd pillar is the militarization. What is the amount of funds that we use to support other UN missions? For example, Kenya is on a mission in what was that country called? To Haiti. How can we measure our militarization? Are we able to support other neighbors when they have a problem? What are the number of funding support that we give there? What are the number of soldiers that we have sent there? So can we get those indicators from these 3 key aspects? So for example, we come to the key aspects, which is the 23 peace indicators, and those are the indicators that scientists and other people will use to measure. For example, they will look at what are the internal conflicts that we have fought among ourselves. For example, we have communities that we have talked about previously in our other discussions, like for example, people living along the Karamoja cluster. We have the Pokots, we have the people from Baringo, we have the people from Samburu, we have the Turkanas. internal conflicts in the country, how many were they, how were they resolved, how were they fought, and then the terrorism impact. For example, we can measure how many attempts have been thwarted, or the attempts that people have tried but it has never worked, or what are the number of terrorism attacks that has taken place. And then we can also look at the perception of criminality. Are you walking around hiding your bag, not being sure of your telephone where you are in the car? So what is the perception of criminality? Is somebody feeling like when they are in a supermarket they are safe, or are they feeling that they are okay because we have the cameras and they can be safe, that they can trade and nobody can pick their contacts or something like that? So that is also a very strong peace indicator. The other one is the external conflicts fought. For example, is there a fight that has taken between Kenya and other countries? If there has been none, then in that indicator we say Kenya has improved and it's showing magnificent increased rights over resolving issues. If there is a fight about Migingo Islands and other places, we are able to now say that Kenya has been able to actually perform better in this. And then we have the intensity of internal conflict. The conflict can be there, but maybe it is just one time. Maybe there are two people who have just two neighbors who are fighting over water and pasture. But what is the intensity? Is it frequent? Is it after every 2-3 months? Are there issues that we think are not being resolved by the people or the organizations or institutions that are supposed to be offering peace? Okay. So that is another main indicator. The other one is violent demonstrations. For example, we've just had the Gen Z demonstrations. To what level did that border between talking about our issues, things that matter to us as Kenyans, for example, issues to do with the finance bill, the issues of taxations, the hatred that the community had about, the different Kenyan community had about KRA and how they are doing their issues. So to what extent is that border? How does it border between having a peaceful demonstration and actually having a violent demonstration where now somebody has to seek support and get a place to hide and not do his business, or even your business can be vandalized, like it happened in our CBD. Most of the businesses that are running telephone businesses, computer businesses, people are really affected. And then to what extent does a peaceful demonstration border a violent demonstration? So those are the measurements that people take, and it's a qualitative analysis, but it can also be a quantitative, because you can check the number of businesses that were affected. What was there a reimbursed? Were those people given the hope to continue with their business even after that? So violent demonstration is a very, very strong indicator of peace. So we know whether there is an advancement in that, or when the rates are showing that it is continuing over a long period of time, just after the elections, people should be prepared to witness a violent demonstration. Then there is something that it tells us about the peacefulness of that country or of that county, for example, for us in Kenya. Then also the International Peace Day looks at the deaths from internal conflicts. For example, you've had a conflict, but that conflict did not have any deaths. So there's high chances that we can say the conflict was there, but it was not imminent. But if a demonstration has happened and there have actually been a number of deaths, not 50, not 100, not 200, not 300, then we start getting concerned, because next time we see a demonstration or we see a conflict, then we are getting upbeat, because we know it can be something that can turn into a violent demonstration. Then we come to violent crime. What is a violent crime? It is different from the first one, which we talked about, violent demonstration. Violent crime is that crime where you know somebody will be taking your phone, but they will not be taking it like stealing ama kutoa kwa mfuko, the way we do it in our matatus or in other places. This is actually when somebody comes with a knife. They either come with a gun, or they come with threats, like even, beating somebody so that they can actually take that phone. So violent crime is different from crime, because crime can be somebody can just walk into this studio, take from us our telephones and just walk away. But when they kill or harm or actually ask somebody to go with them, then we know that is a violent crime, and it is a very strong indicator of a peace one of the global peace indicators. And each country is given these indicators so that they are measured in relation to what the global peace indicators are. So we are not in isolation. So Kenya is just one of the countries where we can use these indicators that come from the global index to really measure. And then there is the police rate. First, we have the political instability. So political instability is also a very strong peace indicator, because we know, like for example in Kenya, it can also almost be evident that whenever an election takes place, we always have that period of uncertainty within 2 weeks, maybe a week. Sometimes the elections have not been announced. So we are very, very concerned until when the election is announced, and actually until the president is sworn in. That is when every Kenyan will be okay. So those political instability are also a very, very strong indicator. What other things brings political indicators are also an interest to the global peace indexes, because they will check, are your systems, your institutions up to date? For example, you conduct an election, but that election is not credible. Then it becomes part of the political instability. Maybe there are people who are disabled, people, women and young people, maybe they will fear to go to vote. That is also an indicator for us in the political instability, because we know for sure people will not be able, as women, they will either may not be able to go and stand in and say, I want a vote, or I want to represent a certain community. For example, I want to represent my community within this estate. I will not be able to come out because I fear that there could be violence. So that is a very strong indicator for the global peace indicators. Then we have weapon imports. So we also look at the police rate. What are the number of police to citizens? I think there is a global indication of how many policemen are supposed to serve this certain number of citizens. So if the indicators show that you have maybe very limited compared, you are very low, depending on the rate that the global people think is the overall or the accepted standard, then we come to the realization that yes, the police rate to the number of citizens that they are taking care of is not enough. So that can bring instability, because if people, like even criminals, know that we have police around this area, they will definitely not be able to conduct any conflict or to bring any crime or violence or anything like that. So because violence can also be verbal, so sometimes if the policeman is around, people will fear. So that is why police rate is a very strong peace indicator. Then we go to import of weapons, weapon import and access to small arms. For example, in this country, we have a law that if you want to have weapons, you must be a registered person. The government has to know that you have this kind of weapon, and you have to be certified that you are mentally okay, that you are able to control your emotions, and that you are able to handle. Because even from all the readings that we have done, mostly countries that have a lot of high rate of weapons are not very safe. For example, there was some indication and some report I was reading a few months ago, and it gives us an indication that actually sometimes even in America we have high rates of young people, suicidal homicides, and also shootings at different public places compared even to terrorism. So for us as global monitors, global peace monitors, we are able to identify and say, okay, for this country, this is what is actually the main issue. For this other one, for example, like in Congo, we could say this is it's a political instability. Maybe for Kenya, it's a democratic emancipation, because people want to show that they are democratic and that they know their rights and that you can actually not infringe on them. Yeah, whether you are a leader or you are a fellow citizen. So those are the things that it varies from country to country. So for example, for us as a Kenyan institution, and maybe particularly for the Kenyan Horizon viewers, what will be of interest to us will be like to check, where does the weapons come from? A lot of people have access to small arms? Is our political emancipation and our democratic rights, are they being followed, and all that? And then there is also about government issues, which is definitely the issue of nuclear and heavy weapons. So this is also a very big concern for global actors, and specifically for the UN Security Council, because any country that has nuclear or very heavy weapons, they will have to know, because every right comes with a responsibility. So you can have all those nuclears and all that, but maybe your responsibility is not actually something that all partners will be very comfortable and very safe with. So as a global peace indicator, we have to be very sure that what is the level of nuclear and heavy weapons that are around you in any particular country, so that people can feel safe, and the militarization can also. So that comes under the big concept of militarization. So for example, by the time Kenya is going to Haiti, it is other partners and other actors who have already supported the process of us going there. So we cannot say that Kenya has just gone there on its own. It has the UN mandate and other support from partners. And then we have the political terror scale. So apart from just political stability, we also have political terror scale. So actually, as a woman, you might want to stand in that political position, but if you are terrorized, and if both in violent and non-violent means are used against you, you know what is supposed to be done. You know that you can represent your people better, but you stay away because you don't want it to get into being terrorized, both at your local level and at other levels. So political terror scale is a very strong indicator for some of the global actors. And then we have the military expenditure. What is the military expenditure that you have? Is it sufficient for you? If it is not sufficient, then we know for sure that even if something happens, even external conflict happens or other neighboring countries come in, you are not able to defend yourself or all that. So that is a very strong peace indicator. And armed service personnel rate. So homicide rate is another one. And the last one is the UN peace funding, peacekeeping funding. So, you know, sometimes like we had a Kenya peace mission in Somalia, and part of the funding was not actually from the Kenya government. It was from other actors, from the UN and other people, because they thought both the Ugandan peacekeepers and the Kenyan peacekeepers are able to support this country to be stable. So when you get into the global index performance, you check what was the funding that came from this UN program? What was the, for example, like when you work with different UN programs, you might have a program for rule of law and security, you might have for governance, you might have for the elimination. Like for example, when you have things that have been put on the ground, removing those nuclear weapons and all that. So basically what we are saying, International Peace Day is a very, very, very important day for all of us in the globe, because it is able to show us what are the areas that we have really improved and what are the areas that we are really lacking behind that we really need to improve. So when the rates are given using the 23 global peace indicators, we are able to say, yes, as Kenya, when it comes to the police rate, we are actually the highest in Africa or the highest in East Africa. So we are able to check what are the rates of police to citizens. And then when it comes to funding of the UN, maybe we are able to contribute to this kind of funding to this type of people. And lastly, but not the least, access to small arms. We are able to say that as a country, we are able to check our borders, and small arms and other weapons or even heavy weapons cannot easily penetrate into our areas. And that is why in peace building and conflict management, actors and even partners are very, very concerned about countries that are unstable. Because once a country is unstable, then it means in that borders anything can come in. So once it comes in, it can even destabilize the other countries that are within it. So maybe for today we will end up there, because we were just looking at 3 concepts, and that was our goal for today, and we have managed to get it. One is to look at the definition of International Peace Day. Why do we have to celebrate International Peace Day? And then number 2, what are the 3 broad areas of the International Peace Day, which is basically what we have talked about: domestic and internal conflict, societal safety and security, and the militarization concept. And then out of those 3 concepts, we get the 23 global peace indicators. So any country can look at the global peace indicators and then rate themselves or research and check if we are doing very badly on this, if we have been rated on this very lowly, what are the areas that we can improve? And then maybe as a country we are doing very well in one of the peace indicators. For example, our militarization funding is up to date. So we are able to actually defend ourselves. We are actually able to get, in terms of technology and innovation, to be at par with other countries that are said to be developed or middle-level countries. So this is also, these indicators can also be checked in 3 levels. It can be, you can check it according to the highly developed countries, to the middle developing countries, and then the least developing countries. And that is what most UN agencies use. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you in our other discussions, inshallah.